Welcome everyone to Coin Bureau Clips and to NFA Live, episode number. Do you know, guys, we're getting towards doing a whole year of this.
I know.
We started January this year, so we're approaching the first anniversary. How about that?
Nice.
Anyhow, that was a bit of a digression. Welcome everyone to NFA Live episode something or other. I am joined as ever by Ben from Into the Cryptoverse. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. And Rob from Digital Asset News. Welcome, Rob. I like your new green screen. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's not easy to do this. You got to go with a Fiverr and you got to pay $10 because it's super special, and then you got to put that up. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, crypto's popping off, so you can afford these fancy green screens nowadays.
Pepe coin, right? All right.
It's paid off for you. That's great to hear, Rob. That's great to hear. So, folks, if you don't already follow Rob and Ben, then you should do so ASAP. Let me find their channels for you. You can find Ben at Into the Cryptoverse, and you can find Rob at Digital Asset News. They are on YouTube and Twitter, and very much worth following everywhere. And yeah, we're in a sort of interesting place for crypto at the moment. So what I thought we'd do is discuss some of the recent goings on in the space, as we do with a few. I've got a few questions to ask Ben and Rob. And then if we've got time, we'll take some audience questions as well. So if you have any burning questions, please drop them in the comments, and we'll try and get round to answering a few of them at the same time, at the end, I should say. So let's kick straight off. I don't think we need to talk too much about ETFs this week. We'll maybe touch on them a little bit, but you know, it's kind of the same old. It's still sort of driving the market. But something that did happen the other day that caused a little pump as well was the inflation figures, the CPI and the core CPI from the United States. Ben helpfully tweeted them shortly after they came out, both down a percentage point. So another dip in inflation. That was back on Tuesday. So my questions to you, gentlemen, are: is this continued decline in inflation? Is this all down to Jerome and the Fed rate hikes? Or are there other factors that we should be considering around this drop in inflation? And does this latest drop change your outlook at all for when we might see a pivot, i.e., rates starting to come back down again? Ben, can I turn to you first for this one?
Sure. I mean, I think it's probably. I think interest rate hikes certainly have an effect on bringing inflation back down. I think you could also argue that it's due to potentially some resolutions with some of the supply chain things. If you think back like a couple of years ago, it was really hard to even order certain things. And there's been a backlog for a long time as well for a lot of people that were buying things over the last couple of years. That backlog is finally starting to clear up in some industries. And I think it's finally letting, CPI come back down. As far as a pivot, I think I said a long time ago, I thought that 5.5% would be the terminal rate. I don't really think they need to go any higher. I think 5.5% is likely going to stay the terminal rate, assuming it's sufficiently restrictive, which I think it probably is. And as far as a pivot, I think my sort of expectation is that we get a pivot in 2024. If you looked at some of the recent manufacturing reports, like we had the PMI a week or two ago, that came in pretty weak. We have continued claims up another 32,000, I believe, today, which is higher. Mm-hmm. It's higher today than it was in all of 2022. Initial claims are still relatively low. But with continued claims going higher, it sort of suggests that while there's not necessarily more people being laid off, the people that are being laid off are having a harder time finding a job, just because there's not as many people hiring as there were a couple of years ago. So I think the Fed has had a pretty easy job for the last couple of years. And that was, you have inflation really high and you have a clear thing that you have to do. And that is to raise rates and to reduce the size of your balance sheet. But they have a dual mandate. And that dual mandate is not only price stability, but it's also maximum employment. And the labor market is starting to show some signs of weakness, right? Again, continued claims higher than where they were in 2022 at any point. The unemployment rate, went up to 3.9% on the last report, which is 50 basis points off the low for this cycle. So I think they're going to have a hard time hiking again, assuming that these trends continue. So my guess is they've reached the terminal rate. I think they're going to try to hold it there for as long as they can. But I do expect a pivot in 2024, and I think inflation will actually keep coming back down, and probably it could easily even go down to 2% in 2024. I think we have a larger risk of disinflation, which is not a bad thing, right? I think there's a higher likelihood of disinflation than hyperinflation, if that makes sense. So that's my general guess on the market.
Okay, and Rob, do you agree with all of that? Do you think? First of all, do you agree with Ben that we've sort of reached the terminal rate, perhaps, and that a pivot we could start to think about a pivot next year?
Sure, anything's possible. Honestly, I thought we might even see like a recession at the end of the quarter of this year, but I was off on that one. So maybe we see it in 2024. So and it's a lot of people are actually calling for the same thing. They're calling for a pivot next year. And when the pivot happens next year, from not just from the pausing of rates, but from the pivot of rates, you're looking at between 2 and 4 months. Then all of a sudden you'll hit a recession. So if they do pivot next year, it'll be interesting because if they pivot next year and there's no recession, that'd be the first time since like the 1960s. But if they do it and we're into 2 to 4 months, how will that affect as everything moves forward? Because we know that the Bitcoin halving is coming in April. And I think that's the big thing right there. How will that affect everything? I don't think that some risk on assets won't do too well, especially parts of the cryptoverse, as it were. But I wanted to pull this up just to remind everybody that people say, the Fed did a crappy job. In all honesty, look at this. We topped out in 2022 for the CPI, and it was a lot. We went almost 9%, and then we dropped down to 3.2%. So not too bad. But the thing that always worries about me, the thing that I worry about, I don't know why I even worry about this, but it's just the numbers that the Fed pulls out from the BLS to say what is CPI and whatnot. It just seems like some of these numbers are just a little bit off. And you can, for everybody watching this video, comment in the comment section to tell me if you feel like this way. Like this was from Chris Martenson, and he talked about how for coverage for medical coverage, what the BLS reports it to be and what he says it actually is, and it just seems like things are just a little bit off. Also, this from Charlie Baleo, and one of the big differences he talked about was this category called food at home, which is the stuff that of course you buy in the grocery store and then you bring it home and then you create it there instead of going to like restaurants. And this was one of the bigger drop-offs from October 2023 year over year. And like I understand that there's a lot of variances from supermarket to different places and all those things. But like when I take a look at the grocery store, again, in the comments section, everybody's a little bit different. Tell me if you've seen these prices go down, stagnant, or go up. Because what it looks like the prices are actually going down. But I got to tell you, like when I was in El Paso, it seemed like everything was elevated a little bit and it just kind of stayed there. Eggs went down over last year. Chicken goes down over the last year. Great. But then a lot of things were just the same. And then, of course, coming here to Puerto Rico, I understand that the price difference is wildly different because of the imports and exports and things like that. But still, these numbers, it's what the BLS is going to report. It's what the inflation is going to be. So we just have to kind of stick with that because they're not going to look at true inflation or something. So I agree with Ben that they're probably just going to say, well, maybe we shouldn't raise this. Maybe we'll keep it steady for a while, higher for longer. Then they cut it. And then we get a recession at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. It's I think this is worth looking at from the CME as well. When we talk about a possible pivot, the consensus seems to be that obviously the current rate 525 to 550. This is looking ahead to May next year, so not all that far away, about 6 months away. And the overwhelming consensus is for a cut, possibly even two cuts. So it does look like people are really starting to think pretty seriously about a cut on the horizon, about a pivot on the horizon. And of course that fits in quite interestingly with the crypto narrative as well. Obviously May is not all that long after April, which is the halving. So I think the first half of next year is shaping up to be pretty interesting, I think, as we look at it now. But
yes,
certainly it's encouraging, isn't it? I mean, it looks like the Fed has done its job. But as you say, Ben, I think other factors, like the loosening of supply chains and stuff, seem to have. I mean, that's kind of they've played out and help the Fed along. But certainly those rate cuts have seem to have done their job, don't they?
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter say that there won't be a recession next year because it's, and they could be right, but that it's because it's an election year and they just won't let it happen. And I was like, well, you're right, except for 2020, 2008, 2000, 1980, and so on and so forth, right? So I mean, like, you have to be careful with that, because I mean, it's always possible we avoid it, and it's possible the Fed sort of engineers a soft landing, but election years, in fact, the last two major recessions kind of kicked off in election years.
Yeah, and then isn't that like in 1980? Wasn't Carter versus Reagan? And of course, Reagan's slogan. Ben's like, but I think one of the slogans was that was Clinton. It's the economy, stupid. But Reagan pretty much ran on that, and of course he beat Carter pretty soundly after a one-termer. So maybe it's one of those things like people say, well, it's not going to happen, but maybe the powers that be want that to happen. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, the other thing is, like, because it's an election year, there might be more pressure on the Fed to pivot to lower rates, to be, to go back to more accommodative policy. That might be a reason.
Yeah. Are we exactly a year away from the US election now? Is it November 2024?
Super Tuesday. Yeah,
yep,
November.
Right.
Super Tuesday.
So
wow.
Let the race begin.
Yeah. Well, hopefully by that time, crypto will be absolutely pumping, and we can be distracted from all the chaos going on around that election. I'm sure that's going to be quite a spectacle. So let's move on then. The next question, obviously, there's a lot of talk about the bull market being back and the bear market being over once and for all. I think we still need to be a little bit cautious around that. But it's certainly, the bears are starting to head off towards hibernation. So I'm curious, guys, are there any particular mistakes that you made during the last bull market that you're determined not to make this time around? Is there anything that still kind of haunts you from the last bull market, and you're going to looking to exercise that demon this time round? Ben, what about you?
I would probably say, like, price predictions. Those are, I mean, like, I put out a lot of price predictions in 2019, and like, some of them hit, some of them don't. And if it goes above the price prediction, then everyone laughs at you, right? And if it doesn't make it there, everyone sort of laughs at you. And the chances that you're going to nail the exact top, especially 2 to 3 years before it happens, is essentially impossible. So I think I probably will, and that doesn't mean I won't ever put out any targets, right? Like, I'm not going to say, like, I won't ever talk about, like, certain targets and whatnot. But I probably will go a little bit not as hard in terms of, like, price predictions, but more so focusing on, like, conditions that favor uptrends versus conditions that favor downtrends, and just sort of saying, like, the rally can go on until a certain time, whether it's like the end of 2025 or whether it's if inflation's going back up, right? That's obviously not a good sign. probably something along those lines. Just trying to be a little bit safer about that. And I'm not trying to say it's not worthwhile to do. It's just, you put yourself out there with price predictions, and then they almost never actually pan out to be what you think, right? And then you never hear the end of it, right? So that was something, from last cycle that was difficult, especially with altcoins. With the altcoins, it's even harder because like I remember last cycle, putting out a price prediction on like Chainlink and Cardano and Ethereum and whatnot, and like Cardano went up 150x, right? 150x, but it didn't go up, like the 200x that I thought it was going to go up or something, right? So like it's so hard, to know exactly what that multiple is. So I think that's probably what I'll sort of and I'll also probably just focus more on larger market cap cryptocurrencies in general, right? Just not even, just focus more on that as opposed to the smaller coins. Not to say that there won't be value found in the smaller market cap coins, but to talk about them more generally, right? To just talk about like, hey, this is a time where like the micro caps can run or the lower market cap coins can run, rather than singling out any specific one. I found that a little bit more useful, I think, in terms of navigating the market. So that's probably what I'll do. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to price predictions, it's difficult because that's what people are asking for.
I know,
that's the
only thing they care about.
Yeah,
but it's also the main things that gets people into trouble too. So.
Yeah, you're kind of damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. People are always asking, how high could this go? What's next? And you're just like, well, you kind of got to resist the temptation, because as you say, like, you never get remembered for the few you get right. It's always the ones you get wrong that you get reminded of. And I don't say that specifically to you, Ben. By the way, I mean all of us. It's impossible thing to do.
It's impossible.
Rob, what about you? What bugbears are you looking to get off your back for next time?
Nothing. I think I did it 100% correct last bull market, so I'm gonna keep doing the same things. I'm just kidding. So like for
I was wondering how long you were going to keep straight.
I nailed it.
Yeah, it was tough because, man, I screwed up last time. Like, I screwed up pretty bad in 2017. I didn't screw up as bad in 2021. I did a little bit better. But the next one is there's a couple of things. It's all about, like, I dollar cost average in, and I want to layer out, and I want to show people the tools that I use, and when I'm selling, instead of just being like, oh, I sold a little bit. And that's kind of like what those things are. So like Guy, if you could throw up the screen real quick, I did a video yesterday, and what we took a look at was, like, not just the dollar cost averaging, but exit strategies. And I'm using Ben's different tools that he has over there for not just Bitcoin, but for alts, and just to see like what could be considered a little bit conservative, what could be considered in middle of the road, what could be a little bit more dangerous, if you want to call it that. So that's one of the things I want to just make sure that the people know that I'm sick of that narrative. And I remember this from 2017 and 2021, the narrative of diamond hands. You got to diamond hands and hold forever. And I think and correct me in the comments, everybody, but is there anybody who didn't buy a big bag, write it all the way up, and then hear about the diamond hands narrative, or it's going to 10x again, and you wrote it all the way back down? I am refusing to do that yet again. So I have a plan in place. I'm going to execute that plan. I'm going to show people when I'm going to do that plan. And then at the end of that, when I sell 80% of my crypto, I'm stepping away from my channel. So one of these things that people say, well, why would you do that? Well, I'm not stepping away forever, but I think that all the shenanigans and all the problems happen in the bull market. And I was guilty of this. Like, I got caught up in the whole thing of it's going to keep going up. And I did sell some, but I should have sold more. You get into like the Voyager, the Celsius, the FTX, and the BlockFis and the stuff like that, and the nonsense that is there. I think the problems happen at that point. So once I sell and hit these price points, thanks everybody, and exit stage left. And I'm not going to do another. I'll have 2 videos on rotation. One is when I sold, and the second one is the top 10 crypto mistakes to avoid. And I'll put those on a loop. And I'll probably only come back for this show, and I won't return until the bear market. And that's my plan.
Wow. So you're going to be the opposite of of a bull market opportunist.
Right, because well, we all know it and we all see it, and we see these, like, I got nothing wrong with price predictions, because Guy and Ben, you guys are both right. Like, first of all, you get lambasted if you screw it up, and you're going to screw it up. But the second thing is, that's what gives us hope, right? If we don't have these price predictions, it's kind of like, what am I doing here? So these things are like, you have to put them out to show people a little bit, be responsible, and just say, it's just price prediction, it's just an estimated guess. But you have to do those things. But I think that in the bull market, everything gets so inflated. And even though we've all been through multiple ones, we still get the FOMO, we still feel it. So to me, I feel like I kind of have to lead by example and just say, okay, I did this, this was my plan, I stuck to my plan, and I'm going to screw it up. I'm not going to hit the top. If I get to 60% of the top, I'll be super happy. And that's just with Bitcoin. Altcoins, I'll probably screw up even worse. But the thing is, you just have to stick to your plan and move forward. So I don't want to stick around to and get caught up in that effect, and then and then the people hear it from me on my channel. I don't want to do it anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I think, and it's worth mentioning to everyone watching as well. I mean, I'm sure many of you are long-time NFA viewers, but one of the reasons we do this show, and one of the reasons we make the content that we do, is not because we see ourselves necessarily as being experts, but we're people who've been through this quite a few times, who've kind of made these mistakes in the past, and a lot of part of the reason why we do this is to be able to share those mistakes with other people, so as hopefully they don't make them, because we've kind of we've learned the hard way in a lot of ways. So take it from us. Everyone makes mistakes, but it's repeating them that's the real sin. But that's why we rake over the ashes of the past, as we say. Okay, I should say as well, I think the thing that I'm going to avoid doing this time around is that I'm not going to be dazzled by people's reputations. I think in the last cycle we had these figures came up. I don't need to mention names. We all know who they are. But these figures who came to be sort of at the top of the industry. Everyone thought they were the gods of crypto, and they turned out to have feet of clay. And I think we were all kind of, well, certainly a lot of us were kind of swept along by personalities, by reputation, by charisma in a lot of cases, and it didn't serve us well. So I'm going to be on the lookout for for people who sort of seem too good to be true. I think that's a lesson I'm gonna make sure I try and learn this time around. Okay, let's move on. I wanted to just ask you guys a question. I can't remember whether we've discussed this before. We might have done. So if we have, forgive me. But I get a lot of talk about meme coins and things like this. And I wanted to ask you guys: is it okay? Is greater fool theory an acceptable reason to buy meme coins? Is it okay to buy Pepe or Doge or whatever, or Bonk or whatever it is, so long as you don't make any pretense of investing, so long as you realize what it is you're doing, is it okay then, or do you guys see it as sort of off limits at all times? Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I think investing is just a personal journey for everyone. That's my view. I mean, I feel like what's right for me is probably what's not right for someone else. And what's right for Guy is probably what's not right for Rob. What's right for Rob is different than what's right for me. I mean, I really do think that's the case, because we're all in different boats. Like, we all have different circumstances. And, it's sort of like, when you're older, when you're closer to retirement, you're probably not going to be someone, investing your 401k into meme coins, because you need that security. If you're 20, right? Like, if you're in college, if you're just out of college, if you don't have to go to college, right? But if you're in your early 20s, or even in your late teens, and you have a couple $100 lying around that you don't really care what happens to it, because you were going to go spend it on a video game anyways, right? And you just want to make an investment into something risky in the hopes that it pays off. Like, who am I to say that that should be frowned upon, especially when you consider that some meme coins at various parts of the cycle have given incredible gains. You know, I mean, like I didn't buy any meme coins last cycle. I don't really regret it. I mean, I'm fine with my strategy. I know that they can go up, but I also don't really shame the people that did, because some of them made a lot of money, some of them made a lot of money and then lost a lot of money. I think that, you know, if you want to go buy whatever, then that's fine. I mean, it's up to you, and it's basically it's your risk to take on, and no one else's risk. And the other thing I would say, just to sort of like, you know, because I know Guy and Rob, you know, and I do too, talk about, you know, various altcoins, right? Like if you decide to invest in anything, the important thing to do is to take responsibility for it yourself, and not look to blame other people if it goes down, right? Because everyone loves everyone when it's going up, and then then the colors show when it's going down. So, you know, I think we're all trying to figure it out. I would say, if you want to invest in it, whatever reason you have, that's fine. I think you shouldn't have other people telling other people what is right and what's not right, because what's right for me is going to not be right for someone else.
Yeah. Rob, what about you? Do you echo those sentiments?
Yeah, I do. And then just everything Ben said is, I totally agree with him 100%. And then, you know, the whole thing about, you know, when Ben said, hey, you know, like if something goes up, everybody's happy. When something goes down, nobody's really happy. But, you know, if you think about it, like if I'm wrong and, you know, things go down, well, if you're like, I mean, if you're just on the sidelines going, well, I thought Rob said that Pepe was going to go to $1,000. He's full of it. But if it goes down, you want to invest, and you're like, well, I'll just buy this dip, and then over time things will work out. That's how I always look at things. I'm like, well, if it goes up or it goes down, I'm still going to win at some point, because I'm just going to be around here for quite some time. And then as far as like the greater fool theory, it's just like gambling. I lived in Vegas for 2 years, and I went to the Strip for 6 months. 6 months out of those 2 years. And let me tell you, like, there are varying levels of degenerates out there. There are just the mom and pop gamblers that just come in for the weekend. And there's the guys that I see there every single day. And it's just, you know, what are you going to be? What do you want to do? If you understand that it's really gambling, then it's okay, because it's a degen play. You're having fun. Everybody's having a good time. It goes down. I lost my $100 or $20 in that one. Or if it goes up, you're like, hey, I'm up to $1,000, $2,000. Congratulations. But I mean, I always look at it like it's just one of those things where it's like, not too bad. The only thing I will say, though, is that, you know, Dogecoin, people would say that was a meme coin. And when I got in, it was a meme coin. It was a laughable type of thing. But remember, since 2014, it's been in the top 33 out of all the cryptos since 2014. So I know, like, people will make fun of it, whatever else, but I'm like, well, how good is your coin doing? And has it been, you know, around for roughly a decade? And who knows what's going to happen with Twitter and Elon Musk. Hopefully he integrates that. But I think Dogecoin is kind of moving beyond that. But the other stuff, I don't fault you for it. Have fun.
Yeah. Dogecoin is extraordinary, the way that it's stuck around as long as it has. And I mean, I'm kind of amazed by SHIB as well, because I saw that as being just a sort of a rip-off of Dogecoin. I didn't really see it having any staying power, and yet it has stuck around. And incidentally, going back to what you were saying, Ben, about people have made money on these things. Apparently, we found this out researching a video recently. I think it's held that the most valuable trade of all time was someone who invested $8,000 in SHIB when it was launched, and at one point it was worth billions. And it seems
maybe
they didn't sell it all.
Maybe billions on paper.
There
was enough liquidity for that, but
that's another thing. Liquidity,
liquidity, and it's never quite what it seems. I think that's an important thing for people to know about meme coins. Actually, it's like this idea of, maybe you buy something and next time you check in, it's gone up 50,000%, and there's an absolutely incredible number out there. It's like it will be very difficult to turn those meme coins back into anything sort of meaningful. I think you should always be aware of that. I think lots of people, I'm sure, have been caught out by that in the past, and it'll happen again. So just be aware that liquidity is not always there. Okay, let's move on, because I want to ask you guys another question. This was something I tried to think of something a little more philosophical to ask you guys, and I was thinking ahead. Now that we seem to be at the start of a new cycle, we got another halving coming up, etc. I've been thinking a lot about just how far crypto's come in the last few years. Bitcoin's now 15 years old, and how much further it still has to go. And I think in the future, possibly even the not too distant future, we're going to see crypto sort of really embedded as part of everyday life. So my question to you guys is, are we going to be nostalgic then for the days when crypto was all a bit insane? And perhaps, are you already nostalgic for previous cycles, or are you just focused entirely on the future? And I ask you this as obviously as guys who've been in it for a long time. So Ben, are you feeling any nostalgia? Do you think we will kind of look back on times like this, and maybe even times like 2023, 2022 in general, and go, wow, it was a lot more fun then?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's always easy to look back on prior cycles with some nostalgia, because you kind of remember how you felt back then. I mean, I distinctly remember how I felt, in late 2020 when Bitcoin was going like soaring. I mean, like 10K to 60K in a few months. I remember thinking like, wow, like these altcoins are going to run so hard the minute Bitcoin stops, right? And because normally when Bitcoin hits new all-time highs, that's when alts really make their move. That's when Bitcoin dominance, that's when Bitcoin dominance tends to drop. And so, yeah, I think like I look back at that time, I look back at like 2017, 2016. I remember 2013, like watching the price of Bitcoin like just plummet and being like, what the hell is going on? Because I didn't know if it was ever going to recover. And yeah, like, I can really look back and be like, yeah, like, I can remember 2019, in fact. And when Bitcoin was at 14K, and be like, well, crap, like this thing's going to hit a new all-time high soon, and then it took another year and a half. But yeah, I think it's right. The present time is always going to be the good old days in the future. Yeah, that's probably where we are right now. And, but I do think it's important to focus on the future as well. I think like if you dwell on your past mistakes too much, then, it doesn't let you move forward. Right. So just, if you have made mistakes in the past, which we all have, right? We all have, and just learn from them. Don't dwell on them too much. And, I know a lot of people lost a lot of money in 2018 after the mania of 2017. And then a lot of the people that stuck around ended up making a ton of money in 2021. Right. And a lot of people lost a lot of money in 2022. Right. And the people that stick around could end up making a lot of money, come say like 2025. Right. I mean, so it's all about, don't beat yourself up if you lost a lot of money in the altcoin market over the last couple of years, but just sort of look to figure out, how can you do it better this time? So, I mean, I think it's fine to sort of think back and think about the mistakes, but also to not focus too much on it, to let it affect you from thinking differently about the asset class, right? I mean, like cryptocurrency, I think will be a big part of the future. I mean, I think there's a space, I think there's a spot for crypto in our system. I mean, I think that it will be there, and it's just a matter of time. So
yeah. Rob, do you agree? I mean, do you see yourself getting nostalgic in the future as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, we'll all think about this after everything gets regulated, and then we're moving forward, and we're like, oh well, now everything's KYC and AML, and you can't do a lot of things that you used to be able to do. Sure, it's one of those deals. But I mean, just moving forward, as far as like nostalgia goes, I mean, I'll be I'll be happy to move forward. But to talk about what Ben was, just to touch on what he said about altcoins and moving forward. Ben, when you got in, because you were talking about 2013 and 2016, 17, in 2018 and 2019, didn't you buy a boatload of, not a boatload, but a good amount of alts during those 2 years before the Bitcoin halving in 2020?
Yeah, I started buying altcoins well, I mean, I bought altcoins before 2018, obviously, but once 2018 arrived, I waited until Q3. I think it was like August or September when I started buying altcoins. And then like right after I bought them, they dropped 50%. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I kept DCAing them for like the next like 2 years. And it's true that eventually they did well. But then I looked back on it in late 2020, and I was like, I would have just been better off buying Bitcoin that whole time than buying altcoins, and then focusing on altcoins after Bitcoin hit a new all-time high.
Exactly. So the reason I bring this up, because I'm talking about nostalgia and going back. I know like some people, they'll ask me like, hey, why doesn't Ben get into alts? I'm like, because Ben got destroyed on alts when he was dollar cost averaging for the long time. He's trying to spare you of what's going on. And then people get pissed off at me because they're like, hey, why didn't you go all in and lump sum in November of 2022? And I'm like, I'm like, how the heck am I supposed to know the absolute bottom? And then it's like, like we look at these comments like it's never kind of good enough. But I just want to throw up, Guy, do me a favor. Can you throw up this one chart? I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It was interesting is that like everybody talks about like, oh, I missed the boat. You didn't miss anything. This is from looking to Bitcoin. This is the Bitcoin rainbow chart. You know that we were in this thing called fire sale, which they made a new category for this because the bear market was so brutal. Look at this. And down here, it didn't even have a name. So like we've been in fire sale forever, and we just peaked into the next level of this one called buy. We're not even in accumulate or still cheap or hodl. This is just one of the indicators that's out there. So I know when people say, I did this, and Rob should have told me to dump it all in a lump sum, like, whatever. Look, I think we've got a long time and a long runway. So just play the long game. I think everybody will be okay.
Yeah. Spoken like a veteran, Rob. Yeah, it's so easy to get swept up in the current narrative, isn't it? I've been feeling FOMO. I've been looking at the prices of sort of various alts and thinking, did I miss that boat? And then you zoom out, and it's just a tiny little step up. It's a molehill in the shadow of these huge mountains that have that we've come past. So yeah, again, it is good to look back on the past in that way and sort of and frame the present in that sense, but it should only really ever inform your view of the future and make you act accordingly. Fantastic. Okay, let's there was a couple of other things I wanted to ask you guys. Firstly, are there any useful resources? I'm thinking, programs, websites, YouTube channels, Telegram groups, services that you guys use fairly regularly. Obviously, we've all got our kind of crypto toolkit, but are there any that you use regularly or that you've discovered recently that you think are maybe a bit under the radar, and maybe a bit underused, that you've found useful recently?
Yeah, I take everything from Ben's website and throw it all on my videos. That's like the most important. That's probably the one that I use every single day. But then like besides that, there's a couple of ones. I don't know if you could throw my screen up again.
Yeah.
I have a folder. It's just called adoption metrics. And one of those I like to take a look at is cryptomiso.com. And it takes a look at the crypto commits GitHub commit history of 126 cryptos. And you can just kind of see like what the developers are doing. You can see like some of these I would never have really even thought about, right? Like ICP had 1,181 commits, and that's over like a month or 2 months, something like that. Sushi, Pancake, Solana, Chainlink, Near, I don't know what Mina is. I have no idea. Mask, and so on and so forth. So stuff like that can kind of guide me in the way of like, well, who's working on this and who's making all the big progress. And then I look at L2Beat, DApp Radar, DeFi Llama for TVL. And then when everybody asks me about Solana, there's SolScan and Solana Analytics. But those are the big ones. And and then this one, tokens.unlock. And you can kind of see like who's going to dump on you. That's about it.
Always good to know who's going to dump on you. Absolutely. Yeah. Ben, what about you? Any particular tools that you've been using recently that you think are a bit underused elsewhere?
Well, there's the membership to Coin Bureau.
Absolutely.
Which I still got to get. I still got to get that. I need the link.
Because you guys,
I need to send you guys that so you can access it.
You guys,
we've been updating it recently, so there's a few new features, but I'll send that over.
I mean, you guys are honest about sort of like these reviews and stuff on the altcoin market and whatnot. So I mean, I think that's a useful tool. I also think, you know, it's what I would say is if you're following, and I'll list a few people, right, and some places, but I would say it's really useful when you follow people that kind of stick around no matter what, and not the people that just sort of pop up when things are going well. Yeah. Because I mean, things could be back to crappy at any moment, and then a lot of people then just leave. But yeah, I mean, so obviously Coin Bureau, Rob, I think, has a great channel for just keeping up with the news, because I can't keep up with the news myself, so I just sort of pop into his channel sometimes, as well as guys, to see what's going on. There's I like to occasionally go to the Ultrasound Money website. I think that's a useful tool to see what's going on with Ethereum. I mean, I'm very interested, of course, in the Ether Bitcoin valuation, and just kind of following like the supply there, and you know, the burn and all that sort of stuff. I think they've set it up in a way that makes it super easy and simple. There's a lot of people on Twitter I think that are worth following, not only in crypto, but there's also some macro people as well. I mean, in crypto, you obviously have like Bob Lucas. You have who else? You have, let's see,
macro. You got like Alex Kruger. He does pretty good stuff.
Yeah, you got the Rational Root. He's Rational Root. Follow. Bitcoin Econ, I think that's a good one. Phil B, that's another good one. There's a lot of like good channels. I think that TXMC, he's another Bitcoin guy who also focuses on the macro as well. He's not afraid to sort of to talk about that, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, there's always Plan B, right? And the sort of the hope that those models provide. I mean, again, like I do think the price predictions are always a bit rich, but it at least gets people thinking about what's, you know, potentially possible at some point. And then you also have Lynn Alden. I think she's a great resource who talks about Bitcoin a lot, but also has a really great understanding of the macro environment. David Lin, I mean, I think he is a great person, because I mean, like, you know, he interviews everyone. I'm like, so if anyone's going to have a good understanding of what people think, it's probably going to be him. You got Darius Dale, you got Garrett Holloway, you got Will Clemente. He's a lot younger, but he's certainly paving his own path, and I think that's a great thing. I mean, I could go. I mean, I really could. The Wolf of Wall Street, Scott Melker. I think he's a great guy.
Sure.
Or sorry, the Wolf of All Streets, not
All Streets. Yes.
Yeah, like you have a lot of Jason Pizzino. I think he provides an interesting view of the markets as well. Yeah. I just wrote like a lot of different people down. Yeah, like I think the point is, like, you should follow people from all walks, and like don't just follow everyone who's bullish, don't just follow everyone who's bearish, but follow a mix, because otherwise you're just going to be living in an echo chamber, right? If you only follow bears, you're going to be bearish. If you only follow bulls, you're going to be bullish. So follow a mix, right? And then you can hopefully come to your own conclusion. So those are some of the people. I mean, not all of them have YouTube channels. Some of them are just like on Twitter. But those are some useful things.
Those are useful. Yeah, I like David Lin, because if you think that like everybody, like the experts that he has on, and you think the experts all kind of like are saying, yeah, this is going to happen for the macro, or that's going to happen, he'll have one person on that's like, yeah, we're definitely going to have a recession like in a month, and they're pretty reputable people. And the next person comes on and is like, no, we're not going to have one for 2 years and we're going to see an all-time high. It's just fun to watch these experts come on and be like, they're totally clashing with each other. It's great.
Yeah. It's funny because it's like there's so many people that like I respect who do macro stuff, and it seems like none of them agree on anything. You know?
Yeah. It's perfect.
And it's great, isn't it? I think that's one of the great things about David Lin's channel and many others. You know, it's just it's that acknowledgement that there are so many different opinions out there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, Ben, if you just follow people who are bullish, then you'll be bullish, but you'll only ever be getting half of the story. And it's like, yeah, I think it takes a little bit of courage in a way to sort of open yourself up to viewpoints that you might not necessarily agree with, because that's so important for getting a rounded picture, isn't it? And again, I think that's what David Lin is great for. He just sort of presents these people, lets them talk, and then lets us make up our own minds about it. I think it's one of the great things about just the internet in general, isn't it? People talk about how the internet has been this kind of, in many ways, a kind of malevolent force, but like you can't argue, I think, with the way it's just opened up such a huge diversity of opinion, and that's such a luxury. I think a luxury that virtually no one else in history has had, and we have it, and we're so fortunate to have access to all this information.
Yeah, it's a shame we can't see like people's correspondence from like thousands of years ago, like on Twitter.
A whole new meaning to historic tweets. Cool. I want to share a couple of Telegram groups. Telegram I sort of neglected for a bit, and I've sort of been getting a bit back into it recently. I think it's a really useful resource, and I've been following a couple of channels. One is called Bread and Butter, which is just it just kind of gives you updates. It's sort of a daily update on what's happening with particular projects, particular coins, tokens, projects, etc., and a few things sort of relevant to that day. So I find that really useful. And then I discovered this. Well, a few of us at Coin Bureau sort of seem to hit on crypto pills all at the same time. It's this Telegram group run. I don't know exactly who runs it, but they're brilliant, and they've got really sort of insightful analysis, and it's quite sort of, I don't know, like the tone. I really enjoy the tone of it. It's quite sort of world weary, but also still kind of loves crypto. I think it's only got a couple of thousand subscribers, but it's a really great little channel. So if people want that, and it's crypto pills, it's like a daily dose of interesting stuff happening in the industry, and they seem to turn up some really interesting things. They've really got their finger on the pulse. So both of those, Bread and Butter and Crypto Pills, are two Telegram groups I heartily recommend. Okay, we are getting towards the point where we should take a couple of audience questions, but just as a bonus question from you guys, very quickly, ETF approval tomorrow? Rob?
100% yes, it's going to happen.
Okay. It's not what I expected you to say.
This is the same as, it's not, I don't think it's going to happen, but I've been wrong before. So let's hope it happens. Like I said before, I'd rather be wrong and rich than right and poor. So let's see if that ETF gets going. Absolutely. Ben, what do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, like I've just deferred to Rob on this because I feel like he's been the most right. Like I mean, like literally for the last 6 years, like people keep talking about it and it just keeps get approved. If it doesn't get approved, it'll probably just get approved next year, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it gets approved just so we don't have to keep wondering when it's going to happen. But I could also see them delaying it until 2024 pretty easily, because if they don't approve it tomorrow, is it true that they likely won't until next year? Or I haven't really even been following it too closely.
I don't think they can, because I think the next one, and Guy, correct me, and everybody correct me in the comments, I think ARK is the next one up in January 10th, 2024. And then after that, everybody's in March. So I thought it would be interesting if next year they don't approve ARK, Kathy Wood, but then they approve everybody else. Talk about lawsuits. So I think if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in January, because I don't see them skipping ARK and then going, all right, everybody else, you're good. but we'll see.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that's part of the excitement over the last few days, in that we've been in this window where between comment periods, I think it is. So the SEC can't approve during a comment period, but we're in a window between two comment periods, and in theory they can approve all 12 applications, which you would think, again, in theory they'd want to do, because otherwise, the unsuccessful applicants would probably sue them, and that's yet another lawsuit for the SEC, which I'm sure they must be heartily sick of now. I've lost count of how many lawsuits the SEC is battling at the moment, so I can't imagine they'd want another one.
Well, they're sick of losing, but I mean, they have taken in $5 billion from these different projects, so. The SEC is quite a moneymaker to put that money back in. So just remember that.
Okay. Well, that puts a different spin on it. Maybe it would be they want one. Bring it on.
I don't know.
Okay, let's turn to a couple of questions. We had a few through. Ben, I wanted to ask this one of you in particular, because I think this is probably sort of partly your area. This has come up a few times before, I think, in sort of general discussion. Thoughts on quantum computing threatening BTC? Love your job, thanks. Is quantum computing something that you've been keeping particularly close tabs on?
Not really. I mean, I did more so in a former life, like when I was in that world. Well, not even in that world, but just a little bit closer to it. This was a topic that actually came up some back in 2016 and 2017. I remember people talking about quantum computing. I mean, I think like anything is potentially a threat to any technology. With that said, what I've experienced, over the last 10, 15 years, not with Bitcoin necessarily, but just in general with technology, is that when something is sort of discovered or found, it just makes the other things have to figure out a way to sort of defend against it, right? It's sort of like evolution, right? Like if something happens, then perhaps there'll be, something else that occurs within crypto to sort of defend against something like that. I honestly don't really have thoughts beyond that. I think we could go crazy worrying about, what the future will hold for quantum computing and how it would affect cryptocurrencies, but I'm not too concerned about it.
Okay. What about you, Rob? Have you been following this quantum computing narrative at all?
No, but I always thought to myself, I think we got bigger problems if quantum computing does come out and people are worried about their crypto. Well, think about every different bank account that's out there in the world. I mean, if you want to crack anything, that'd be the pretty easiest way to do. So quantum computing comes out and things aren't quantum computing resistant, we got bigger problems than just a little bit of Bitcoin being lost by certain people.
Yeah. A few months ago, I was hanging out with some people who'd been to. They had the Satoshi Roundtable here. That very sort of exclusive Bitcoin gathering. They had one of them here in Dubai, and I was chatting with a few people after it. I didn't go along myself, but I was chatting to a few people who'd been along, and apparently this whole business of quantum computing had come up. And I think that someone asked Adam Back, who's obviously one of the real sort of Bitcoin OGs. Yeah. This was they asked him, are you worried about it? Is this something that's a real threat to Bitcoin? And apparently he just said, "Nah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." So I kind of feel if someone who's been in Bitcoin that long and is understands it that well, is kind of that blasé about it, I'm guessing it's going to be okay.
I
hope so. Yeah. There are a few comments actually about it. I mean, I think sort of along the lines of like it's not just crypto that would be at risk from quantum computing. Everything, also any sort of encryption system would be at risk. So perhaps worrying about whether a quantum computer would be able to crack Bitcoin is besides the point. I think maybe there would be much bigger questions to concern ourselves with. Okay, thanks for that, gentlemen. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. So Nick is asking, do we expect a pullback if no ETF is approved during this 10 days window? I guess that refers to tomorrow. Do you think if the window closes, so to speak, we might see a slight pullback? And will it matter in the grand scheme of things?
Let's hope so. That'd be great, because keep buying stuff. But yeah, maybe. And in the grand scheme of things, no. I don't even think, even if it doesn't get approved in January or March, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to affect us, terribly. We've gone this long without an ETF, and it's great for capital to come in. But if it doesn't come in, it doesn't matter. The narrative is already present. Traditional finance wants Bitcoin. That kind of gives us like a green light and a stamp of approval. So I don't care if it gets approved or not. It'll probably pull back, and then off you go. And then you got to think about this. Even if it does get approved, is it like a buy the rumor, sell the news? It might be. So just play that as you see fit.
Yeah. Ben, do you agree with that?
I mean, like we can always expect pullbacks. I mean, there's actually, over the last year, we've had a pullback about every 3 months or so. I mean, we sort of started from a low in December. We then had a pullback in March, so 3 months later, right? January, February, March, and then April, May, June. June marked a pretty substantial pullback just before we had a move higher in June, and then July, August, September, right? September marked a low before another move higher. Then October, November, December, right? So maybe December will sort of mark another, another pullback, right? I mean, it's not like the markets don't just go straight up, right? There are pullbacks along the way. So I certainly wouldn't be that surprised. We actually had a pullback in late 2019, just before the year ended. And then we basically just went sideways into the end of the year. So like today, it would correspond to like, having a pullback to the low to mid 30s and then just kind of staying there until 2024.
Yeah. And Rob, I think a lot of people probably feel the same way that you do. A pullback, great. I think there's a lot of people waiting to buy that dip.
Let's hope we get a pullback so we can all afford some Caspa. Sorry, I was looking at the comment section. That's all I see is Caspa. I was like, all right, here you go. There's your Caspa's. Caspa's monetary wise.
It's invaded the comments.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like a lot of people have made a lot of money with Caspa, so that's great. Rob, did you sell the swimming pool in order to buy more Bitcoin? That's a question.
I just sold the green screen to buy more Bitcoin. I never had a pool. They're all just fakes.
Very good. I'm just scrolling through. Yeah, a lot of people had thoughts on meme coins in particular. A lot of talk about it just being, about the community as much as anything else, which I think is kind of interesting. I think that's an interesting thesis to look at. It's not so much about, it's not all about just making money. I think, one of the crazy things about meme coins is just how it sort of brings people together, and that can, I guess, never be a bad thing. Anyhow, we are approaching the top of the hour, so I will let you guys go and get on with the rest of your days. But thank you everyone for tuning in today. Thank you for all your comments and questions. Thank you to Ben and Rob for their insights and wisdom as ever. And we will be back, I believe, next week, although I'm not sure who's hosting next week.
Ben, I believe.
Ben is hosting.
Yep.
Fantastic. So, okay, we will be back on Into the Cryptoverse next week then on Ben's channel. If you are not subscribed to Ben and Rob, then you can find links to them in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy those green candles.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.